So it's 1st and 10. The field is before you. The ring awaits. What's your play? Have you studied the capabilities of your offense? Have you made sure you know all the tactics of the opposition? Did you strengthen your defenses in the offseason? Do you trust that your coach and the playbook that he has given to you is going to make it for the season? Because if you want to win, you're going to need to be studied up. You're going to endure rigorous training, and you got to execute it all well. I am Robert Kelly. I'm one of the pastors here at the church, and that's what we hope to do during this entire series called 1st and 10. Life is like the highest stakes football game you have ever imagined possible. You have only so many chances to get in the end zone. You need to know the plays, the rules. You need to build an offensive strategy, and you need to work your defensive plan. Your teammates will help you. You will help them. You have coaches for every area of gameplay, and of course, a head coach who pulls it all together. God has a master plan for your life. You are a part of His grand plan for the world. And He has given us everything that we need in order to finish our season of life strong and to get the ring of glory. So let me tell you a little bit as we get underway what our game plan is for this series, some of our goals that we're going to be chasing each Sunday. We're going to take this time to learn the Ten Commandments. That's going to be one of the primary things that we hope to accomplish. Along the way, we're going to acquire some Bible study skills. We're going to also study how it is that Jesus fulfills and interacts with the Ten Commandments. These are separated, the life of Christ and the Ten Commandments, by quite a long distance historically and culturally. And so we're going to explore that connection between the two. And we're going to see, of course, how they apply to us today. What is the Christian's relationship to the Ten Commandments? What's it supposed to be? What binding authority do these words have on us? Is there more continuity or discontinuity between what the Old Testament law stated and what the law of Christ was as He gave it to us? And of course, we hope to have some fun as we're doing all of these things along the way. Now, this series should prove helpful for you if you have ever wondered what role religion, or specifically God, ought to have in your life. Maybe you've wondered what some of the more confusing or difficult passages of the Old Testament especially mean, and how you might actually understand them for your life today. You know, some of us, we just simply grew up dreading God's rules. You know what it was like you remember the PAL league? Some of you got your kids in PAL. And you know what it was like. You would get, your kid would be assigned, or you were assigned to a coach, and then there was all the conversation behind that. You'd have to, all the other parents would start talking about it. What kind of a coach that your kid got? What kind of a season are they going to have? And you're the parent who now has to figure out if this is a good thing for your kid or not. You know, this coach that they got, he's really kind of tough. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for your kids? Maybe you say, good, they're going to whip them into shape. You know, he's going to practice them every day, and they're going to be long practices, and he's going to yell at the kids that don't do so well. You know, and you'll tell them, kick them up, you know, give them a swift kick in the butt and kind of get them moving along. Or maybe you're the parent who says, actually, I was just kind of hoping my kid would enjoy the season and the game. I don't know that I want all of that pressure on them. I sort of just wanted them to have some fun playing this game. See, for many of us, that football season is either going to be filled for our kids, or for us when we were there, with guilt and failure and fear, or will it be filled with joy and freedom and delight? Very much the same questions we ask about our lives. These are the same thoughts we have about God and His seemingly demanding list of rules and commandments. How do they matter to us today? These are ancient laws. How do they apply to us today? I mean, will they really help us when we're dealing with a lousy boss? Or when we are relating to our parents or raising our kids? Can any of these commands give you the motivation you need to continue pressing on when you're simply worn out and tired after all that life has thrown at you? Can these ancient laws help save your marriage? See, the answer to these and many other life challenges is a resounding yes. See, God's great love for us caused him to give us his playbook. His great love caused him to do it. And when he did this for us, he did it so that we might learn to live well with him and each other. And in that way, studying the Ten Commandments this fall is a worthy goal for us to pursue. Now, next week, I'm going to give you some of the historical background to the Ten Commandments and kind of the context that brought us to the point where they were given to the nation of Israel. But for our purposes this morning, we're going to jump right into the intro. We're going to do two things, actually. What I'm going to ask you to do is take one of these. You can just hand these out if you don't mind. And there you go, just hand those out. And whoever back there, Kel, just grab the rest of them for me at the end. And this is a little bookmark form of the Ten Commandments, and we're going to give this out to you now so that you can put it somewhere in your, I guess I shouldn't say in your car, but somewhere where you can look at it and read it and, stick it as a bookmark and something you're doing and just keep it around so that you can learn it. Stick it on your mirror when, you're shaving. You can kind of review them and start to learn them, because our hope is that we become very familiar with these Ten Commandments. And so this will become sort of a study sheet, a little crib sheet for you even, that we can use over the course of this series. And we're going to hopefully learn them, but beyond that, understand them and see how they apply to us. We're going to jump right in with Exodus 20. We're starting in verse 1. There's a little bit of a little prolegomena here before we jump into the very first verse that I wanted to cover. So we're in Exodus 20, 1 through 3. Would you read this passage with me? And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. See, God tells us, as he's giving these commands to the nation of Israel, that he has actually drawn close to us in love and compassion. When he says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, what he's telling them is a reminder of the history here. He's saying, I sought out Abraham, your ancestor. I sought out Moses, who delivered you from slavery. It was God's initiative. When he says to them, I am your God, I am the Lord your God. This is a very personal moment for him. He's even using his personal name, I am. This is who he revealed himself to be to Moses so that he could tell the people, this is their God. He's your God. It's a very personal moment for him. And this, by the way, his personal name, the I am, roughly means it's the I am that I am. I am the one who was and is and who will forever be. He's the self-existent one. So when the scriptures refer to God as the I am, that's kind of the part of what that means. But he starts with his reputation, you might say. He doesn't start in kind of a philosophical way to talk about, who he is and why you should believe in him or anything like that. That's how we often begin our conversations about God. He doesn't. He starts in the personal relationship, what he has done for them. He says to them, I'm the one that sought you out. I'm the one that chose you. I'm the one that made the grand promises. I'm the one who delivered you from slavery. He loved them. He's making certain that as he begins this list, he's reminding them about his great commitment to them. And so the Ten Commandments then are tied to God's great love, his care, his protection of his people. And it's a very self-sacrificing sort of thing. Now, I emphasize this with us because I think for many of us, we have to have a shift in our thinking about the entirety of the law. For many of us, we see the law as this list of things that God is commanding for us, but we don't ever stop and ask what motivates God to do it. Why did he do it? What motivated God toward this end? Often we see God's just kind of giving us these rules. He's kind of, he's in this cosmic killjoy phase. He's just trying to put us down again and, beat us into shape. And God's saying this isn't at all the basis of the law. None of them are rooted in that sort of a thing. They're rooted in God's deep love and mercy, a desire for our greatest good. That's why he starts off by telling them that I'm the one who saved you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. And I think many of us, we don't actually experience God in this way. But imagine what could take place in your own life and in your own mind if there was a shift in our understanding of what motivated God to do this. If we could see in underlying all of his rules, all of his laws for us, we could understand that they are being genuinely motivated for our greatest good. It would change the way we interact with them. It would change the way we experience them each and every day. See, God gave us these rules to live by, and they're essential for humanity to thrive. Remember what he said? And God spoke all these words. And God spoke. That's how he started this section. God spoke all these words. In Deuteronomy 5:22, we have a parallel passage to this. He says, "These are the commandments the Lord proclaimed in a loud voice to your whole assembly there on the mountain from out of the fire, the cloud, and the deep darkness." And he added nothing more. Then he wrote them on 2 stone tablets and gave them to me. See, ours just says, our version that we're looking at says, and God spoke all these words. We might think, well, he spoke them. Well, that's nice. He was kind of giving the Israelites some guidelines, a few good ideas about what they might do, the 10 suggestions. And he said, you read the Deuteronomy, he said, no, these are God's commands. These are his laws. He made a great big show of impressing upon his people his power, his majesty, his might, out of the darkness, the rumbling of the mountain, to say, these are essential for you. They're not open for debate. We're not discussing these things. We're not going to come to like a happy middle ground between what you want to do and what I would like you to do. We're not cutting a deal in this way. These are the words of God for you. And they're not open for discussion. They are his laws. Now, for us, of course, law and authority are fast falling out of favor, especially, I think, in this generation and in the West. Let me see if we have any fans here in the room, okay? So, if you are a fan of this jersey, let me hear it. Anyone? Not a single. Do we have a couple? All right, we got a couple. All right, we got a couple fans here. That's pretty good. But what about this jersey? Do we have any fans of this jersey here? How about this team? Anyone? Anyone got it? All right, let's see this again. Hold on. This any fans here? A couple Giants fans? All right. Jets fans? What, 2? What, really? This is still New York. What? They're suffering. Good. All right, so you got a couple of different fans. All right, how about this jersey? Any fans here of this jersey? Nah, not so many, right? This jersey actually comes with accessories. Look at that. Now do you like it? Yeah, right. Not so much. By the way, these are the new if your phone rings during church fouls. So if your phone rings, you're fouling out. We look at this jersey. Do you know that violence against referees is at an all-time high and increasing? Have you heard this? It's actually becoming like quite an epidemic. There are entire organizations and leagues that are now trying to go after the problem of violence against refs. Parents against them, not the least of which. Abusive parents from the sidelines. But you will hear every once in a while some terrible story. Salt Lake City, 46-year-old Ricardo Portillo. He was punched by a player after making a call, and he later died. He killed the ref. Netherlands, a group of teens, they beat a 41-year-old volunteer ref to death. A group of kids, guy who's volunteering to help out in their sports league, they beat him to death. Valencia, Hector Ginner, he was 17, and he was the ref. And he was attacked by a player who was an off-duty cop. And he was punched and kicked. In this attack, the teen lost 3 liters of blood and his spleen. They say that the violence against refs is at an all-time high. I think this is in part why Albert Mohler, he's a philosopher and a theologian, he says, to live in this day is to live in an age that is against the law. Western society is addicted to minimal law and maximum flexibility. Modern society resists the very notion of a binding authority. After all, who can tell us what we must and must not do? Who can tell us how we are to live? Who can tell us whom we are to serve? It explains the attitude we have about the refs. Why it is we love our team, but we can't stand the people enforcing the rules. But of course, that isn't always the case, right? We don't always hate the refs. So there's a rule in football that you cannot hit a guy who's out of bounds. Makes sense, right? He's already out of bounds. The play should be over. You're not supposed to hit the guy because lots of bad things can happen when you hit a guy who's out of bounds. You're also really not supposed to pick on the quarterback too much. Like, cut the guy a little bit of slack. He's only 6'4" and 280 pounds. But you got to cut him a little slack. This is a hit from the Week 1 49ers versus the Packers. It's a late hit. Niners on offense here. He gets the snap, but he's looking around. He can't find anyone open. So he's just like, I gotta get out of here. So he goes for it. And boom! He is clipped. In fact, look at the fight that breaks out now. He'd been talking trash all week about taking out the quarterback anyway. And so, of course, the Niners are flipping mad about this because, this is, first off, he was out of bounds. It was, they're saying it was a foul. And, of course, the refs called the foul because you can't, there's equipment, there's people, there's cameras, there's stuff all over here. You could really hurt, hurt someone here. When they show you the replay, I love these shots. Look at this. He is out, 2 steps nearly. Boom! He's past the light. And he gets totally clipped. So we look at something like this and we're like, all right, listen, this is a good law. This is a good rule. This is terrible. He got penalized and fined for this move. Totally. This is. You can't be doing that kind of a thing. Well, also Week 1, Jets and the Bucks are playing. Jets and the Bucks. Similar situation. Geno Smith, Jets quarterback. He is also running for the sidelines because he has nowhere to go.
Claiborne coming, Smith running.
Here comes the late hit.
He's going to get out of bounds.
Barely. But this got the penalty. Flag was thrown. 15 yards. That put them in the field goal range.
Kick is up.
So this penalty gave the game to the
Lavonte
Jets.
David, about as good a football player, young football player as there is in this league. Makes
probably
a
wouldn't have.
play,
Look at the play.
gives
Look, he
him a shot. Nick
barely
Folk drives it
touched
right
him.
down the middle.
So, of course, was this a good call or a bad call? For all of the Jets fans, this was a good call because, of course, the ref, this is the right rule. There's a good reason for the rule. We got to stick with that rule. But if you were a Bucks fan, you're like, oh, come on, he barely touched him. He was barely on the line. You couldn't even, if this had gone the other way, we would not be so happy about that call, especially if it was a big game. See, our reaction to the rules will depend upon our experience of what we've done to get the judgment, what side of it we are on. So we don't always actually despise the referees. We despise them when they are working against our desires and our goals. That's when we're really most frustrated. See, when a ref makes a call in our favor, I don't want to say we love them, but we at least like them. They've maintained the order in the way it ought to be, and that happens in all life when laws are played out in our favor and law keepers enforce them according to what we desire. See, when they're stopping people from speeding in your neighborhoods, laws and law keepers are your friends, aren't they? As long as they are protecting your neighborhood. When they're defending your rights and your property, bring them in. More the laws, the better. The stricter we hold to them, the better. Because they're protecting your greater interests. When they're protecting our kids, of course we love them. We want more laws. Well, the schools are all changing. You know this. Post Sandy Hook, you can't go drop your kid off at kindergarten anymore. The doors are new. They're locking behind kids now. You got to carry keys if you have And we're all like, hey, that's the way it should be. These are good rules. These are good laws. We should enforce these things. Anyone who doesn't and it results in a tragedy, they should be punished for not. Because these are good. And of course, the rule of law, good laws, and justice is essential to human happiness. We cannot escape this truth. Without the refs, would we even have a game? Would we even know what we were doing? Now, I remember when my kids were younger, and we'd play a game, and they would make up the rules as we went along. Have you guys experienced this? So you'd get out there and you'd be like, all right, you throw the ball from the tree. And you're like, all right, so you throw the ball from the tree and you get it to where it's supposed to go. They're like, no, not that tree. It's the other tree. And you got to go back to the other tree. And you're like, all right, you throw. And they're like, no, you got to do it backwards and over your head. And you're like, okay, wait, can we explain the rules first? Because I'm not really sure where we're even going with this. This is what we do. And we all like to play this way. A little bit of creation of the rules as we go along. But how would you even have a game like this? How would it even make sense? I think for each of us, we come to this place where we realize we don't want to live in anarchy. We actually want to live under the rule of law. It's when humanity will thrive. But of course, these laws have to be good laws. They have to be good laws. And so who can establish that? Humanity? Are you so confident in humanity's capabilities, wrapped up in our own ethnocentric and self-centered worldviews, to create laws that are binding on all of humanity? Really? Because we've seen how that has played out in nation after nation. We're now being drawn into conflicts around the world because one nation decided what its rules should be, and they don't honor the general sense of the rule of law to others. See, that's why there has to be a sort of transcendence to these laws. They have to be God's laws. It's the only way it will actually work. Moeller, again, the philosopher, he said, it is odd to modern and postmodern minds that we claim a divine sanction for law. The prevailing secular mindset says that the law is simply a product of human experience codified in legislative form. It is just how we learn to live with each other. There is no absolute transcendent ought. See, there's nothing that we ought to do. This is just how we learn to live together. There's nothing that we must do. This oughtness that comes from God alone, please. We look at that as such an old idea, but it is essential for humanity to thrive and be happy because the law is a gift. It is here for our great good. And we see that in the very first commandment. He says that you shall have no other gods before me. That's the very first one. You have no other gods. You are to follow, serve, love none other than the God of the Bible. And of course, whenever, by the way, the Bible says shall not, we often have to ask the question, what is it now commanding? For every shall not, there is a shall. The Westminster Catechism says, where a sin is forbidden, the contrary duty is commanded. Many of us, we only hear the negative, but we fail to experience the positive, because what God is really saying is, love me. Love me and nothing else. I have to be at the center of your affections. And when I first hear something like this, I think to myself, it seems a little bit insecure, doesn't it? It's like the husband's eye gets caught by a pretty cheerleader, and the jealous wife's like, no, look over here. Is that what God is doing? He's like the jealous wife. He's like, come on now, what are you doing looking at is God really so insecure in his relationship with us? He's like, no, me, love me. Because it's no other God. The exclusivity there is pretty steep. So you have to stop and ask, why is this? Well, if you relate it to what we've already been talking about, God's desire for our greatest good, you start to see the connection. We have to love God to find our greatest fulfillment in life. It's how we were made. If God does not solicit from us undying allegiance to him, he's no longer working for our greatest good. He must become the center of our affections if God really desires what is best for us. And so he pursues that. He is committed to our greatest good, and so he knows that every time our ultimate allegiance, our fan loyalty, falls on anything or anyone else, it will lead to terrible disillusionment. We will have a kind of life that is a mockery of what humanity was meant for, now and for eternity, we would have terrible disappointment. God needs to be at the center of our affections for humanity to be truly whole. Thomas Watson, a Puritan, says it in only the way they can. God is the chief good. In the chief good there must be delectability. It must have something that is delicious and sweet. And where can we suck those pure essential comforts which ravish us with delight but in God? God is infinitely better than all other things. Who would weigh a feather against a mountain of gold? It is God that bespangles the creation, that puts light into the sun, that fills the veins of the earth with silver. God gives life. He infinitely outshines all earthly glory. He is better than the soul, than angels, and than heaven. He is a universal good, commensurate to all of our wants. You see, in times of deepest need, all other loves will disappoint. So when we're enticed to forget God, we will hurt ourselves, and eventually we will hurt others. So we're not to follow any other gods. Not in their day, the stars, the moon, Mother Earth, not Baal or Molech. In our day, not Allah or Buddha. We're not to idolize the rich or the famous, the smart or the talented, not material goods or power or pleasure, not fashion or the opinions of others or ourselves. Our ultimate good must be pursued in God and God alone. And that exclusivity now helps us understand the claims of Christ in the New Testament. In John 14, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. In Acts 4:11, the early church says, Jesus is the stone you builders rejected, which has become the cornerstone. Salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. You hear the same exclusive claim reiterated and even expanded in the New Testament. So Exodus 20, 1 through 3, the introduction to the Ten Commandments and the very first commandment, they teach us that God has drawn near to us. Have you sensed God calling to you? Because it's always his initiative. He's the one that sought out his people. He's been saying to them and to you, I am here. I'm powerful. I'm good. And I love you. He's asking if you will let him free you from your slavery. And that may very well be your first play. That might be where you are at in your journey with God. You also might be coming to a place where you have to ask, do I really trust that his commands are for my greatest good? Do I really believe this? Because it will change everything about the way you view him and the scriptures and your relationship with God, with the other people. It'll change everything. It'll revolutionize the way you live in this world. So will you submit yourself to the goodness of his law? I know even today, Christians, we struggle with this idea. It's always about the love of Christ. Let's not focus on these laws. Let's not focus on any of these rules. There's no freedom in that. But in those cases, I think freedom has become an idol to us. Will we hold on to these stubborn habits and attitudes? Will we continue to live in self-centered ways, or will we submit ourselves with delight? A delightful kind of obedience. You know, I think that folks who regularly attend Beacon, they come here because they find hope and delight in God's laws. I'm serious. Like, it's true. People genuinely do this. You could ask them. You could talk to the people around you after the service and ask them. It's true. People can find an increasing delight in obeying God's laws. And if that obedience is offered freely and cheerfully, not grudgingly, not related to guilt or fear, you'll begin to see the power of the goodness of God's laws in your life. So have you committed yourself to following God in this way? To following Christ entirely and exclusively and passionately? If this really is, if these rules are really for our greatest good, the more obedience means the more delight and joy and satisfaction. Why would you not pursue God with abandon? So I'd encourage you to join us for the rest of this series. Each of these commands, they're going to represent one more movement down the field of life for us. And each one's going to open up a new understanding of who God is and how we are to relate to each other. You imagine what it would be like as a congregation to have a group of people here on Long Island that are committed to seeing the beauty and the power of God's good law and to live it out every day, to delight in it even, to be joy-filled with obedience rather than grudgingly obeying him, or to become champions of justice for others as well. This is what we long for as a congregation, and we invite you to join us in it. Would you pray with me? Lord, we're asking that you would cause us to see and to experience the fullness of your goodness as given to us in your law. May we see how it is that Jesus has both transformed and fulfilled and extended them into our lives. And may we use them, Lord, as they were intended, to both see our need for you, our dependence on you, and your great care for us. We ask all of this in Christ's name. Amen.